Welcome to Mystic Realms Recap. Please like, share, and subscribe. Enjoy today's episode.
As Estrella went to look for Keiko, Shiro started to sketch out the magic circle that she was planning to carve. In addition to this, she would add a few notes on how to redirect most of the mana towards her so that she could speed up her recovery. Referencing quite a few of Kuromi's notes and information from her own studies, Shiro managed to draw up a few prototypes that still needed to be tested. However, she wasn't going to test them just yet since she was still waiting on Estrella to come back safely with Keiko. Looking out of the window, she could only hope that nothing has gone wrong. "Don't worry, I'm sure they'll come back safely," Nantian said after seeing her worried look. "Emin, you can go back and rest now. I'll stay up for a little longer. If anything happens, I'll call for you, okay?" Shiro smiled. Nodding his head, Nantian tidied up the room a little before leaving after saying goodnight. After Nantian left, Shiro made sure to keep an eye on what was happening outside. 5 minutes, 10 minutes, 15, then 20. There was not a single sign of Estrella or Keiko, which caused Shiro to worry. But just as it reached the 25-minute mark, a portal snapped open in her room as both Keiko and Estrella crashed into the room. Both of them were heavily wounded as burn marks could be seen all over their body. Widening her eyes, Shiro wanted to get off her bed quickly, but a wave of fatigue hit her before she could even stand up. Gritting her teeth, she forced herself onto her wheelchair. "What happened? Why are you this injured?" Shiro asked while trying to help them up. "People. There are people inside the dungeon," Estrella managed to squeeze out before more blood started to pour out of her body. Asterisk bang. Pushing the door open, Nantian rushed into the room and saw the injuries on both Keiko and Estrella. Reaching into his inventory, he pulled out a few pills that were meant to help in Shiro's recovery, but were ineffective due to her special circumstance. After a short while, the wounds started to close as their breathing returned back to normal. "All right, can you tell me what exactly happened?" Shiro frowned. "You first, Keiko." "Right?" Keiko nodded as she proceeded to explain in detail what had happened. ####. Making her way north, Keiko's teleport was forcefully cut off as she quickly balanced herself on the tree branch. Furrowing her brows, she started to look around the area for anything that could have done this. However, there was nothing of that sort. She had even tried to use her senses to scan the area for mana, but that yielded the same result. "Something's wrong," she thought to herself. Jumping off the tree, Keiko started to scan the area. Unfortunately for her, a fissure opened up next to her. Feeling a suction force that she couldn't fight against, her body was flung through to the other side as snow crashed against her body. Feeling the coldness of the surroundings, Keiko felt her danger bells ringing. Quickly turning around, she wanted to teleport back out, but it was blocked by a barrier. "Damn, this isn't good," she muttered. Looking around her, she started to scan her surroundings. Despite the blizzard that was happening right now, she could still make out a few silhouettes in the distance. Tall mountains and what seemed to be several skyscraper-like buildings could be observed from her location. Behind her was the fissure that was slowly closing. Despite her efforts in trying to go through it to escape, she was only rebounded by the effects. Even her teleport markers were cut off, leaving her stranded in this strange zone. Knowing that she was the intruder, Keiko understood that she must conceal her presence for now. The first thing she needed to be doing was finding a way out of this realm. The second was figuring out what the hell was happening in here. Choosing the closest skyscraper that she could see, she started to make her way over there. Activating her stealth skills, she trod through the snow while making sure that she was constantly scanning her surroundings for anyone that could be dangerous. As she was in unfamiliar territory, she couldn't take any chances. Not long after she left the area, she sensed a person flying towards where she had come from. Giving them a brief glance, Keiko noticed that they seemed to have a surveillance system attached to their outfit. "It's probably a good idea for me to just avoid all combat. From what I know, there's a good chance that this is what Shiro was looking for, so combat would only reveal our presence. For all they know, I could just be a villager that had accidentally slipped through." Suppressing her presence as much as possible, she made her way to the skyscraper. Once she arrived, she noticed a few guards by the main gate. They held spears that looked like they were of pretty high quality, one that she would normally give to some of her higher-ranked subordinates. Furrowing her brows, she readied a dagger and snuck around the side of the skyscraper to see if there were any more guards. Noticing there were two more that were hidden around the area, she thought about her choices and cast an enchantment on her dagger. Testing it out for a moment, she nodded her head in satisfaction and threw it towards the skyscraper. Allowing the dagger to travel as far as it could, she flickered from her spot and teleported to where the dagger was. Latching herself onto the side of the building, she sighed in relief after seeing that her invisibility was still up. Climbing higher up the tower, she looked around to see a window of sorts so that she could figure out what was happening. Unfortunately, there were none. Deciding to go to the top, Keiko climbed up the side of the skyscraper while making sure that her presence was concealed. After a few moments, she finally reached the top and gritted her teeth at the sight in front of her. Armed guards were dragging battered and bruised villagers to a magic circle where their body would suddenly be drained completely, rendering them into an empty husk, which was thrown to the side. Seeing the giant corpse hill that was being burnt to ash, Keiko knew that there were more victims than what she could see. Taking a deep breath to calm herself, she tailed behind the guards while making sure that her presence was concealed. TCH, what a pain. These villagers can't reach high levels since their potential is limited. The more that come in here, the more labor we need to do. The first guard complained as the second nodded his head. Well, what can we do? The ones with good potential are held somewhere else so that they can reach their maximum level quickly. Those with lower potential are given to us. If we want to change things up, we'll need to get some achievements and rank up. That way, we can have some of the easier jobs. The second guard sighed. MN, but even so, isn't the master rushing things a little? If he expands the dungeon this quickly, it'll gain the attention of the people around the world. Hell, I think the martial hero is going to come to investigate soon. I think that's part of the master's plan. It's not like we need to know since we're just grunts in the end. True, but I still want to know if I'm going to die soon or not, so I can prepare myself for a fight to the death. Since I can't run, I might as well get ready, you know? Plus, even if I try to run, the master would turn me to EXP before I can even get far enough. MN. Listening to their conversation to this point, Keiko got a general gist of what was happening. This place was akin to an animal farm for the master. Except instead of animals, humans are the ones being farmed. Seems like these towers have special properties. How else are the villagers leveling up without actually killing any monsters? Keiko thought with a frown. Shaking her head, she prepared to leave. Leaving the way she came, she wanted to explore some more when she felt a burst of mana in the distance. Realizing that it was Estrella's mana signature, Keiko understood that this might be her ticket to return so that she could give Shiro the intel. Rushing over, she saw Estrella being bombarded with light. ####. I never did find out who it was that's attacking Estrella, but we've managed to buy just enough time for her to link up a portal to the orb that you hold for us to escape. Though I don't think we can escape using the same method. Keiko shook her head as she could still feel her heart pound from nervousness. This is the worst possible scenario. I think I might know who's inside this dungeon. Shiro took a deep breath as this was the last person she wanted to meet at this moment. You know who this person is? Nantion raised his eyebrows in surprise. Yeah, I would say he's the Duan F***, but it seems like I now know why his attitude suddenly changed. He's in a similar situation to me. Shiro nodded her head. He's a reincarnated as well. Keiko furrowed her brows. MN, and he's someone I knew from my past life too. His name is Ikari Lumiere. Once known as the Light Hero, but he now has a new title. Light God. I heard that he reached Tier 8 God after coming to this world. He seems to have restarted his leveling stage much like what had happened to me. Shiro frowned. Wait a minute, Light God? You mean the guy who attacked us was a god? Keiko widened her eyes. Yeah, you're lucky to have even survived. Now that we know he's here in the dungeon, saving Yuki has become much harder than anticipated. Honestly, there's almost a 0 chance of this succeeding with him around. I suppose the only good news is that he is still Tier 5 and now Tier 6 Legends. Once that happens, even if we have several peak level people with us, we wouldn't even be able to scratch him. Shiro sighed while massaging her eyes. Do you think we can kill him with me, Keiko, Estrella, and the martial hero when he arrives? We can try to make an alliance with him. From what the guards had said, it seems like the martial hero is coming here soon. Nantion suggested as Shiro immediately shook her head. You don't understand how much of a pain in the ass the Light God is. You see, as long as there is light, he can constantly heal. His kit revolves around him, dealing damage with his light while also healing from it. He also has a perverted skill where he uses his health to fuel the attack. But since it's a channeling type skill, he could essentially fire it forever as long as he is under the sunlight. Unless you're in tier 6, you don't want to be fighting him. Shiro denied. Not only that, but since your attacks are also light-based, you'll only be helping him. She gestured at Nantion, who only sighed. That's troublesome. Tell me about it. I had to actually fight the F***er. Despite being a tier 6 back then, he found a way to weaken me and eventually win. If not for that, I might have been able to win. Shiro shrugged as she thought of ways to deal with the situation. To put things bluntly, she had a disposable asset if things became tough. The best case scenario would be that they could trade life for life and kill the light, be **starred right here and now, but that was wishful thinking. Even if they got the upper hand, he was slippery like a cockroach, making it hard to kill him. Go back to your rooms for now and set up a few barriers around the place in case he tracks you back here. Which, of course, is hopefully not the case. In the meantime, I'll be thinking of a few ways that we can perhaps help Yuki without endangering ourselves too much. Shiro suggested as the rest of the party nodded their heads. Leaving the room, Shiro was now by herself. Sighing for a moment, she laid her body on the bed and closed her eyes. Why must he be here now? Shiro thought with frustration since this was too early. She wasn't even tier 5 yet, for God's sake. If she wanted to survive, being level 500 was a must. What to do? While Shiro was stressing about the possible ways to save Yuki, Nimue watched with worry since she knew how dangerous this situation could be. There was, however, one thing they could do to resolve the situation. Abandon Yuki and continue to grow in strength so that she could stand against the light god. But with Shiro's personality, that would be the last thing that she wanted to do. Even if we try not to fight him, there's no guarantee that Estrella's binding can hold him. We also don't know where Yuki is held either, so the operation would take much longer than I would like. I want to send a drone in, but doing so would result in him finding out that I'm here. Once he knows that, I'm pretty sure he'd try to stop me at all costs since he knows how dangerous my class can be if I'm given the chance to grow. Keiko did say that her teleport was restricted inside the dungeon. She could use it normally as long as it was inside of the premises. But the moment she targeted the outside world, it would be restrained. With their close encounter, I know for a fact that he would add some traps to prevent Estrella from escaping like last time. Breaking the situation into a few simple steps, I'll need to figure out 3 things. 1. Where Yuki is. 2. How are we supposed to leave the realm and stop Light God from chasing? And finally, 3. How we're going to avoid combat while he is inside the dungeon. Number 1 can be resolved after I recover. I'll be able to create a mini army of drones to scan the dungeon. As for number 2, we'll be relying on Estrella, but I'm not sure if that will work since he may have reinforced the dungeon. It's better to have a contingency plan for this. As for 3, the best way we can do that is to avoid using mana since that would give our location away. But with all that snow, it'll be hard to hide without exposing ourselves in the process. Shiro sighed. I'll think of a solution tomorrow, I suppose. The main task is still for me to recover. If I can't recover in time, I won't be able to assist them in rescuing Yuki. Plus, despite Estrella being disposable in a way, we'll still need her so that we can return. Wait a minute. Would I be able to make the realm node? My level is a little low for this, but my mana fits the requirements of the build. If anything, doing so might result in me suffering from nanotech corrosion again. However, if this is successful, I can guarantee an escape even if we don't have Estrella with us. She paused. What's a realm node? Nimue asked curiously. Right, you don't know about it. You see, the realm node is something I developed with one of the mages in the heroes party. Since everyone kept challenging dungeons of higher level, we needed a way to escape if things got a bit out of hand, such as a mutation. Therefore, we've managed to develop this teleporting device. There are 2 parts to this, Node 1 and Node 2. You would place Node 1 at a spot where you would want to switch locations with, while Node 2 will be on your body. Should anything bad happen, you can activate the node to trade places with you, even if you are in a dungeon. However, and this is a big however, the previous realm node used my friend's own teleport spell, so I'll need to draft up a new blueprint that works around Estrella's magic. I'm also thinking of giving Estrella a court appointment so that she could gain a passive that might help us out in terms of guaranteeing an escape. Shiro replied. I see. Would it be blocked by the barrier, though? I'll need to run some experiments. Hopefully, it wouldn't take more than a day since all I need to do is record the barrier frequency and edit the realm node so that I can counter the barrier. How else do you think I managed to bypass a mutated dungeon despite it not being able to be opened from the inside? Shiro grinned as she made a note on what she needed to do tomorrow. If everything goes to plan, she'll accomplish the following within the day. Recover to full health, bypass the dungeon barrier, develop realm node, Estrella Ver, and perhaps make an alliance with the martial hero. After all, if they were going to end up fighting the light god in his current state, they'll need as much backup as they can get. Though having the martial hero on their team would only introduce a few more independent variables, which is not what Shiro needed right now. They had one purpose inside the dungeon, and that was saving Yuki. Everyone else was secondary since she wasn't about to risk her life against her mortal enemy for some F***ers who she doesn't even know about. I hope this works, Shiro muttered before falling asleep. Waking up the next morning, Shiro had Nantian follow her to a spot just outside of the village. Forcing herself to stand up for the magic circle carving, she etched out 3 prototypes as she wasn't sure which one would work as she intended it to. Wait a minute. Shiro, why are these magic circles harming you? Nantian asked with a frown. Reading the runes, he knew that it was designed to harm the one inside the magic circle. That might be the case for other people, but it's different for me. I have the Phoenix and the Angel bloodline after the contract has been edited by the Victoria chick. One of the benefits I got from the bloodline is that I gain increased regeneration from fire and light. I have both elements on top of my life fire, so I want to see if I can forcefully dispel the backlash I received from the berserk skills. Shiro explained. I see, but the moment I see you get hurt, I'm going to stop the magic circle, okay? Nantian sighed with worry. After all, he knew how stubborn Shiro could be. With her friend's life in danger and a past enemy within the dungeon, he knew that she wanted to be at full fighting capability. Don't worry, everything's going to work out just fine, Shiro reassured with a smile. After a few moments, she had the first magic circle drawn out. Wiping the sweat from her forehead, she proceeded to draw out the next 2. While she was doing this, Keiko was doing a task that Shiro had given to her before leaving the inn. That task was for her to report some of her findings to the world government so that they could put together a powerful attack force. That way, they could at least distract the light god should he try to chase them. As he is still a tier 5 entity, it would still be difficult to face off against an army of tier 5s. Of course, Shiro never had any hope of them actually beating the light god. They were just there as a distraction. However, if things go according to plan, no sacrifices should be needed and the attack force would only need to free the captives should they arrive in the dungeon. The key points of the report was that she had discovered a man-made dungeon that had a human EXP farm inside. There's a special formation of sorts that could force the people to level up to the peak of their potential before the master of the place harvests them for the experience. The master, a peak tier 5 entity, was highly abnormal, almost impossible to kill due to his element. If he is allowed to get any stronger, it would become a threat to humanity due to how he treats human life. With this kind of report, the government would immediately prepare an attack force, especially after the assassin hero said that they can't handle this despite having 2 peak tier 5 entities, excluding her. Not too long after sending the report, she got a message back asking her to provide the location and as much information as she could about the enemy so that they can prepare an adequate attack force that wouldn't empower the enemy. Showing Shiro this message, Keiko waited for what Shiro was going to say as she knew most about this enemy. At least the government is taking this seriously. That's good. Shiro smiled while typing down the key parts of the light hero's skill set. This was a little outdated, but she could give them a general estimation so that they could somewhat prepare for this. Well, you did tell me to explain to them how much of a danger he is. Normally, I would just say don't worry or send some small reinforcement to show that I got the situation under control, which is almost all the time. However, this time, I'm literally asking for a combined effort of different countries. Of course they're going to take it seriously. Keiko shrugged. Damn, having someone with a good standing in the government is quite a boon, huh? Shiro raised her eyebrows. Speaking of people with high standing, Nantian, are you able to provide some support as well? The more support we have, the higher the chance of killing him. If he survives and gets stronger, I can guarantee that he's going to be the bane of everyone. Don't worry, Shiro. I've already asked the sect master. Since only the elders and some selected disciples are level 500, it's up to the sect master to mobilize them. I don't have that much authority yet, but if he gives us the green light, we should get quite a few elders coming to support us. Nantion smiled. Nigeria Nirio Epsilon. Thank you. Shiro nodded her head gratefully. While she wanted to torture and kill the light god herself, she knew how dangerous he was, so the best-case scenario was for him to die right here and now. Of course, by die, she meant him losing his physical body in this world. If one of the queens could have an avatar of sorts in this world while her main body was elsewhere, then the light god could also accomplish the same. At least if she kills him now, she could remove one of the hidden thorns pointing at her heart, allowing her to grow much freely and establish her spot in the world. After that, she could only hope that she doesn't bump into him too soon in the age of demons and gods. At that point, he'd be a tier 8 god. Once she was finished with all the magic circles, she had everyone except Nantion to step back. All right, Lil Tion, I need you to listen carefully when I explain how you should fuel this magic circle, okay? Shiro said seriously as Nantion nodded his head. The first is going to be a general fusion of the elements inside my body. That way, it can start to heal from the inside out. There are 3 spots around me: life fire, phoenix fire, and celestial star. These 3 are the main elements that I have access to which can heal me. I need you to fuel the life fire first, then slowly increase the output on phoenix fire and celestial star. With the life fire taking charge, the rest of the magic circle should be able to manipulate the other 2 elements to follow its path and travel through my body. Hopefully the end result would be me recovering to 100%. Shiro explained while standing in the middle of the magic circle. Using what little mana she is able to spare right now, 2 flickers of fire and an orb of light appeared in the 3 points as Shiro paled a little from the mana use. Seeing this, Nantion quickly inserted his own mana into the magic circle. Receiving more fuel to burn with, the life fire flared around Shiro's body as she closed her eyes and focused on using the magic circle to control how the life fire would act. Thanks to Nantion's mana, she's able to do this without using her own. As she was controlling the life fire, the phoenix fire and celestial star slowly increased in size. Once they were at the appropriate size, Shiro gestured for Nantion to keep them at that size while she carefully had them travel through her body. Feeling the soft warmth of the life fire followed by the phoenix fire, Shiro could already feel her body repairing itself while the celestial star would reinforce her body. As her body was being repaired, Shiro was pushing herself to the limit since controlling these 3 elements remotely with a magic circle was much harder than doing it herself. It was something akin to trying to cook in a game that requires you to control each of the individual fingers and muscles. Not only was it awkward, but it was also very difficult, and she needed to focus carefully so she didn't accidentally kill herself. Since she was doing this carefully and making sure that her body was repaired to the best of her capabilities, what would have only taken a few minutes ended up lasting around an hour or so. However, by the end of this, Shiro could finally feel strength returning to her body. Phew, seems like my body is in peak condition. Shiro grinned as she glanced over to the system. EX healing skill created. Seeing that she had just created an EX skill, Shiro furrowed her brows and wondered what she should call it. How about the name Grace? She smiled as the system registered the name. Grace, EX healing skill. Merging the 3 elements that you have control over, you stimulate one's potential and revitalize them from the brink of death. The life fire revitalizes the body. The phoenix fire reinvigorates while the celestial star reinforces. When they are healed, they receive the following benefits. Plus 30% temporary health. If they have 100 million HP points, they now have 130 million for the duration of this spell. Plus 20% mana and magic effectiveness. Plus 50% resistance to damage from all sources. Duration, 30 seconds. If the target has not lost any health, the benefits they receive are doubled except for the damage resistance. In this case, they receive plus 80% resistance to damage from all sources for the duration of a minute. If the target is lacking health, a single use of this spell will heal them for a minimum of 40% of their total health. Percentage healed increases the more wounded they are. If the target has less than 10% of their health when this skill is used, they are instead healed to full. To use this spell, you must use a charge. Every day, you gain a charge at sunrise. You may store up to 10 charges of this spell. Whenever you use a charge, 30% of your mana is sacrificed as part of the components needed. Current charges, 1/10. Reading about the spell, Shiro had to pause for a moment as this was something that had far exceeded her expectations. While she understood what a good healing spell looked like, she clearly underestimated what it meant to have an EX rank skill. This spell was like her rejuvenation skill, but on steroids. Not only could it buff, but the buff could also double in strength should the target be at full health. If she used it at the start of the fight, the additional 80% resistance to damage for that minute is going to be a game changer. To make matters worse for the enemy, they would also receive an additional 60% temporary health at the start of the battle. They are basically 4 times as hard to kill at this point, and that was just a general estimation. However, that wasn't the end of it. Since she had created an EX-ranked healing spell, she had also received a title. Benevolent Saint EX. You have developed an EX-ranked healing skill that can help the world as a whole. When you are in an army of more than 100 people, a single charge of your grace will now heal everyone you deem as an ally for the extra charge of 20% of your mana. This title was truly ridiculous since it would heal everyone. If she was in an army of more than 1 million soldiers, her grace skill now healed everyone and gave them a 50% resistance to damage from all sources. With this, the enemy would be facing an army with 10 extra lives if she used her charges properly. Well, damn. And here I thought I was meant to be a frontline combatant. Shiro muttered with a raised eyebrow. Emin? What happened? Nantion asked curiously. Explaining new skill to the party along with her EX ranked title, they couldn't help but stare at her with shock. What class are you again? Keiko asked with a twitching smile. To be honest, I don't know. I can act as a tank, an attacker, a ranged, a control mage, a damage mage, a buff healer, and a debuff supporter if needed. At this point, I am the literal definition of jack of all trades, master of none. Shiro replied as she could hardly believe what she had done with her class. Are you sure about that? I'll be more inclined to know you as Shiro of all trades, master of all. Kiyomi rolled her eyes since Shiro excelled in basically all the areas. Even if she didn't focus on one particular area, her dynamic skill set allowed her to win the battle. You can try to target her, but she has so many escape skills that catching her would basically be a pipe dream. Unless one shut down the dimension around her and stop her from utilizing her skills, there was little to no way of killing her except with brute force. A and Beta. To think that you would receive the title of Benevolent Saint, there really is a bug in the system. You of all people shouldn't be getting that title. Nimue sighed. What? I get that I'm no saint, but I'm pretty benevolent now? Shiro pouted. The day you're benevolent is the day you're okay with letting the light god live. Plus, weren't you thinking of using the government-made army as a meat shield to rescue Yuki? That's not so benevolent now, is it? Nimue retorted as Shiro only coughed. Averting her gaze, she focused back on reality. Anyways, now that I have this skill along with the title, I can definitely say that we might have a chance to win if we're in a group fight. This is the best chance that we can get rid of this problem until the upcoming age. Shiro smiled. But keep in mind that since he's a god, it won't be so easy to completely kill him. There's a good chance that this body is just an avatar for him. Killing it wouldn't do anything, and his main body would be in perfect condition. Of course, I don't know the details, so killing him once might kill him for good. Who knows? Regardless, there is one key point, and that is we need to kill him now if we want to have a safe time cultivating our strength until the coming age of demons and gods. If he's allowed to continue to grow now, he may very well sabotage humanity before we can even step on the starting line. She followed up as the party nodded their heads. So what do you suggest then? Nantion asked with a smile. I suggest that we send some scouts into the dungeon, namely my drones. While they're scouting out the situation, we'll try to stop the dungeon from expanding so no one else is forcefully dragged away. Not only that, but I'll also be developing a realm node to guarantee our escape if things start to go south. Plus, this is actually beneficial for us. During the time that we're spending here, I can use it to obtain charges for my grace skill. Once I get 10 charges, we'll attack the dungeon. Shiro suggested. Hearing her proposition, the party agreed with her reasoning and started to prepare for the battle in the dungeon. Nantian sent the sect a new message containing some small details about Shiro's skill so that they could guarantee safety in battle. That way, there's a higher chance for the other elders to join in. As for Keiko, she did the same and kept some details from the government. All they needed to know was that Shiro was their lifeline and her healing skill is better in a large army. The more people they have, the more impact her skill would have. There were a few rumors of the government making huge movements as people were confused as to why they're pulling back a few of the finest fighters from the front lines. With so many high-level adventurers being redirected elsewhere, many could guess that it was to deal with a threat that was much bigger than the demons. Soon, 2 days passed as Shiro had spent this time scouting out the inside of the dungeon. With a few of her camouflage drones surveilling the situation inside the dungeon, she made sure that they would leave a few hidden nodes for her to scan the internal composition of this dimension. Of course, she did run into some trouble at the start since the connection with the drone would be severed and they would decompose on the spot due to the fail-safe that she had incorporated. However, with Estrella's help and her prototype realm nodes that she crafted using Estrella's magic as a base, she was able to create a remote that helped her with controlling her drones despite them being in a different dimension, thus allowing her to see what was happening in the dungeon even though she wasn't physically inside it. As the second day came to an end, both the martial hero and a few elders from Nantian's sect had arrived in the village. Inviting them to the inn, Shiro decided to have Nantian and Keiko give them a rundown. So I heard from the government that this threat was one that needed all of our cooperation and that there are several innocents stuck in that dungeon, right? The martial hero, Ling Tian, asked with a serious expression. Indeed, the threat level of our opponent is exceedingly high. We have proof to suggest that even with all the heroes gathered, it would be difficult to defeat him. Therefore, we'll be waiting a few more days for more reinforcements. The government has stated that the attack force will be arriving in another day or two. Keiko replied, I see. In that case, can you tell me why a B-ranked adventurer is partaking in this operation despite the high risks? We don't want to have any unneeded casualties. Ling Tian asked while gesturing to Shiro, who was sipping on some juice. Sup? She smiled. You see, she's the one with the healing spell that can heal everyone. Her presence will be required on the battlefield, not as an attack force, but rather the backline support. Keiko explained. That makes sense. So is there anything you can tell me about the inside of the dungeon so far? Ling Tian asked. Of course. However, we'll go over the entire situation once our friend there has given the elders a rundown of the situation first. It'll be better for everyone to discuss the plan together after all. Keiko glanced towards Nantian, who was talking to 3 elders right now. Speaking of your friend, how come there are 3 level 500 combatants that I've never seen before? If they're this powerful, should they not help out in the front lines? Ling Tian furrowed his brows. You see, martial hero, we already have plenty of people securing the front lines. However, while everyone's attention is gathered on the front lines, the dangers in the back are ignored, such as what happened with the dragon a while ago along with the current situation. Naturally, having a few level 500 combatants in the back line will make the place a safe place for those that are lower leveled. Shiro said with a smile. Hearing her statement, Ling Tian furrowed his brows for a moment before nodding his head. Waiting for a few moments, Nantian had finished talking to elders and had gestured for them to take a seat. Seeing that everyone was now ready, Shiro drank the rest of her juice and stood up. Throwing a holographic device on the table, she activated it and a map of the entire dungeon could be seen with only a few missing parts that she could not scout out. In the 2 days that we've been scouting inside the dungeon through various means, I have constructed this map without notifying our enemy. The empty spots you see are locations where any attempts to scout would be found out instantly. As you can see so far, the inside of the dungeon is ridiculously vast. Even now, the edge of the dungeon is expanding as we speak. We have tried to slow down the expansion using a few methods, but the effects were minimal. We've already sent out an evacuation notice to this village as they're preparing to leave as we speak. Shiro explained while gesturing to the borders of the map. Do we know where this thread is located within the dungeon? One of the elders asked. His name was Liang Jie, and he was a full offensive fighter with a sturdy physique. His appearance was quite young as he looked to be someone in his late 30s, but Shiro knew that he was much older. Somewhat. For you see, the threat would travel around the dungeon and leave in certain intervals. From this, we can gather that he would only occasionally stay inside the dungeon to check up on those he has kept in his farm. There seems to be a main doorway, which he enters and leaves through. Since this is a man-made dungeon, the edges are rather unstable, which allows us to invade without notifying him should we act fast. As for his main residence within the dungeon, we can only guess that he resides around this area. Shiro replied while pointing at one of the biggest unknown points on the map. No, yes. If we had attempted to scout out the area, we would have been discovered, and that would have ruined our current advantage. She shook her head. I see. Good job, lass. Normally, youngsters would be hasty and run any sort of advantage we have. I like how you operate. Liang Jie laughed as the other elders only chuckled since they appreciated her cautiousness. Plus, since Nantian had already informed them that she was technically part of his branch sect as a member, they had a better opinion about her. I just want to ask, what is the main goal of this operation? Is it to eliminate this threat, or is it to save everyone inside the dungeon? So far, we know that there are people being farmed for EXP, but we don't know how many are being kept captive. Ling Tian narrowed his eyes since his priorities lay with rescue rather than killing. Do not worry. I have already drafted up an estimated number of captives held within the dungeon. However, unless we deal with the threat, he will continue to collect people for EXP. Anyways, since you are all curious with the number of captives, I may as well show you on the map. First, as a whole. Just as Shiro said this, a mass of red dots lit up on the map. Each of these dots represent a captive. She reminded as the newcomers paused in shock. The holographic skyscrapers were now filled to the brim with red lights, while there were even a few that were hidden underground. Not only that, but they could also see a stream of red dots within each mountain, somewhat reminiscent of tree roots, stretching across the entire dungeon map. As you can see, the number of captives are off the charts. And this is even when we're ignoring the large chunks of missing information that we have yet to gather on the map. We can only presume that the ones with higher potential are kept in these areas. Shiro explained. In terms of pure numbers, how many captives are we looking at? Ling Tian asked as he felt sick seeing so many people being cultivated like vegetables for their EXP. We're looking at a minimum of 400,000 captives. Shiro replied after a short pause. 400,000. Hearing this number, the four now truly understood how much of a danger this threat was. They knew that this number was just the current number of captives, nothing about the previous years. For all they know, he could have killed well over 1 million people at this point. Indeed, which is why we'll need to make sure that we're working fast when we decide to invade the dungeon. If we're a few steps late, all of the captives could be dead. Shiro nodded with a frown. Are we able to urge the attack force to hurry up? The more time we waste here, the higher the number of casualties. Ling Tian frowned. Don't be so hasty. If we urge the attack force to arrive quickly, their large-scale movement may startle our enemy. So far, there had only been rumors of the government gathering people. Since the threat in mind has been doing this for quite a while, I doubt he has the energy to prepare at every rumor of a gathering. Hence why we need them to be careful. Thankfully, Keiko had already relayed this information to the government, and this is why they'll be arriving a little late to the village. But once they do, we'll be able to attack immediately. Shiro replied. I only have one concern over this entire operation. Another elder said as all eyes were on him. What's to guarantee that the threat wouldn't escape the moment he senses a large number of people entering his realm? I understand your concerns, but you don't need to worry. For you see, my companion has a high degree of mastery over realms. When the attack force is here, she'll bring everyone to a separate realm. This will make it so that there is only one mana signature which comes from her. However, we can go further with this. You see, she has a contract with me. I'll be able to bring her inside my mana realm, meaning all the enemy feels is the weak signal coming from me, who isn't even a ranked yet. Shiro smiled as the elders were surprised at this revelation. The image of a lone girl suddenly summoning an army to assist her was one that sent a small shiver down their spine. If they have everyone prepare their best spells and hold them within the realm, they'll be able to deal some heavy damage to the enemy the moment they are summoned. Feeling good about the operation, they continued to discuss a few key points through the night. The next morning, Shiro woke up feeling rather confident about the upcoming operation, but she quickly suppressed that feeling since feeling confident was a bad omen, especially when she's fighting someone like the light god. Shaking her head, she got dressed and had a quiet meal. Seeing that Keiko was also in the canteen when she walked down, Shiro gestured for her to sit down next to her. Any news on the attack force? The government doesn't exactly know me, so I doubt they'd message me the news. Shiro joked. Since the canteen was completely bought out by them, no one else was around, and they could talk about information without any worry. Of course, just to make sure, Shiro had set up several protective formations around the place to keep spies from hearing any of this. Well, I wouldn't be so sure. You are quite infamous for your habits after all. Keiko chuckled. However, I will say that there is indeed some news. In order to not arouse any suspicion, the attack force is split into several waves that will arrive at different times. The first wave is arriving in about 5 hours while the second wave will arrive in 8. All in all, we have roughly 6,000 adventurers that are leveled around 400 to 500. Very few are actually at the peak, but there are 1 or 2. Keiko explained as Shiro nodded her head. While 6,000 was a bit less than what she had hoped or expected, it was better than facing off against the light god with just their small party. What's their average level? Please tell me it's higher than 450. Shiro asked. Unfortunately, the average level is 430. Getting to higher levels is very difficult after all. Keiko sighed. URG. That's fine. I can work with this. Since it's a make or break situation, I can't be stingy with my wares. Maybe I should craft them a few items to help out with the fight? Actually, never mind. The maximum level of weapons I can make right now is 200. With them being 430, they can't wield my weapons. Shiro clicked her tongue. Unless she was able to make weapons that were a minimum of 425, most of the adventurers can't use the guns. That being said, it's probably for the better since hitting the target with the gun was quite difficult, especially when they're fighting at their speed. What can I make in order to increase their fighting potential? Shiro wondered to herself while going through the different blueprints that she had stored up in her database. I thought you wanted to hide your class? Yeah, but dealing with the light god is higher on my priority list. Of course, I wasn't planning on giving everyone a gun, but rather a few on the lower level side of things so that they dealt more damage. Plus, I was planning to spread my influence the moment I deal with the light god. After all, he's the main thorn in my side. Not only was he the one that killed me, or rather, Kuromi, but he is also my mortal enemy that recognizes my skill set. With him around, I can't spend a single day with ease. Shiro shook his head. This single battle held more significance than what most of them realized. If they win and are able to kill the light god's current body, she'll be free to develop her power in this world till the arrival of the age of demons and gods. However, should they fail, the future is basically sealed. The worst part of this is that they must deal with the light god. If he's left to his own devices, he'll become an unstoppable force once again. Anyways, I'm not sure about how the attack force would react to you as our leader. The martial hero and the elders are reasonable in that they see talent over level, but I doubt the attack force will be the same. They might feel a little uncomfortable having a commander that is 200 levels below them. Keiko reminded since this was one of her main concerns. If there's a disconnect between the commander and the soldiers, the overall fighting power they have will fall dramatically. In this state, the soldiers will be more inclined to do their own thing rather than follow orders. Don't worry about that. I won't be the one commanding the attack force. Shiro smiled since she had already prepared for this. You, the martial hero, and the elders will be the ones to lead the attack force. Think of me as a strategic headquarters. I'll be installing tracking models on every single soldier so that I can see their health and mana pool. That way, I can efficiently use my grace skill to the best of its power. Plus, I'll also be giving the main figureheads an earpiece for me to contact you and inform you of the current state of battle. My main goal for today is to do some more scouting along with informing the elders and the martial hero about this plan. Hopefully, they agree and follow through, making the fight a bit easier. After all, from a strategic standpoint, I'm one of the better choices for command post since I know most of his skill set. I'll be able to inform the attack force of what they should do when he uses certain spells. She explained as Keiko nodded. I trust you. But what about command delay? It takes time for the information to be relayed from you to the attack force. In that time, there's a high chance that a few casualties may appear. Keiko furrowed her brows. I got that covered too. For skills that are relatively easy to defend against, I'll just relay the information to the different leaders and have them choose how they should react to the situation. For the skills that require an instant reaction, I'll change my voice to one of the leaders and command their part of the attack force for them. Example being, if your part of the attack force is being targeted, I'll change to your voice and forcefully override your comms. Shiro explained while changing her voice to match Keiko's. Alright. Pausing in surprise, Keiko raised her eyebrows before smiling. Seems like you got everything handled. Of course, the enemy we're facing is one that we must defeat after all. I cannot be half-assed with the preparations. Shiro nodded her head. Speaking of the enemy, it sounds to me like you have a personal vendetta against him. You know him from your past life. Keiko asked curiously. Emin, I haven't told you yet, have I? Shiro tilted her head. In a nutshell, I have lived 3 lives. In the first one, I was betrayed and killed by the light hero who became the light god. In my second, where I was Kuromi, I was once again betrayed and killed by Duan Han-ing. As luck would have it, it seems like the light god had reincarnated as Duan Han-ing. And finally, in my third life, my sense of self from the first life was placed in this body and I was reborn as a snow girl. It wasn't until recently did I gain all of my memories back. Shiro explained as it was only now that she realized how ridiculous the situation looked like from an outsider's perspective. Wait, so you're telling me, for 3 lifetimes, you were mortal enemies with this light hero? Keiko asked as she took a moment to digest the information. Yup. In the first 2, I was killed by him. However, you know what they say. 3rd time's the charm, and in this life, I'll be the one to kill him. Plus, I've already screwed his daughter over by taking her body from her. You know Lysandra? She was actually supposed to become a vessel for the light goddess. Shiro chuckled as Keiko once again took a moment to digest the information. Am I drunk right now? Because I feel like I'm King hallucinating. Keiko sighed. Don't worry, you'll get used to it. Just know that I need to kill this Kerr, and that letting him live is a bad idea. Shiro smiled and patted Keiko's shoulder. Standing up, she cleaned up her plate and prepared to do some scouting in order to pass time until the attack force arrived. Honestly, I swear that everyone that finds out more about you will be forced to have a mental breakdown. Nimue sighed. What? No, I don't give them a mental breakdown. The feats I accomplish is the one that gives them a mental breakdown. Shiro replied with a smile. And by extension you. Nimue rolled her eyes. Semantics. Just know that if they get used to the insane things, it benefits them later when the world will literally be flipped on its side. Shiro chuckled. Shaking her head, Nimue decided to give her mind a rest and not focus on what Shiro is doing. After all, if she did, she would require a furniture store for the sheer number of tables she would need to flip. Spending 5 hours to scout out the dungeon some more, Shiro returned back to the village in time to see the first wave of the attack force arriving. Glancing at the first wave of the attack force, she could see that around 3,000 adventurers had arrived. Scanning through the crowd, she immediately noticed a few that seemed like they could be commanders. Taking a mental note of their appearance and name, Shiro made her way back to the inn. Calling another meeting with the elders and heroes, she had them gather in the canteen. Right then, with the first attack force arriving, I'll hand you these. Shiro smiled and produced a few earpieces. Looking at them, the elders furrowed their brows since they had their own. If anything, they could just link up the channel and it'll be fine. Before you say anything, you might want to have a look at the skills attached to the earpieces. Shiro chuckled since appearances were deceiving. Earpiece, purple. A special earpiece that is imbued with 2 skills that may help one out in the battlefield. Skill 1, Commander. When activated, a map of the battlefield is displayed as a hologram in front of you. You may interact with the hologram, and the soldiers will feel a small urge to move in accordance to what you have done to the hologram. Skill 2, Inspire. When activated, your words carry authority and inspiration with them. The morale will increase easily depending on what you say, and the soldiers are more inclined to follow your orders to a certain extent. Reading the 2 skills, the elders were rather surprised that Shiro could find so many copies of the same earpiece. Even if they didn't have the commander skill, they would be fine with the inspire skill since raising morale and having troops listen to you was very important on the battlefield. However, the fact that the earpiece has a skill like commander made it something incredible. How does the skill commander work? Have you tested it out? Liang Jie asked curiously. So far, he had a really good opinion of Shiro, and her work was always done to the best of her abilities. A hard worker and one that didn't spare any effort in making sure that everything will work. Him asking her about this was just so that the other elders would be pacified about a new item. Indeed I have. I can tell you my theory on how it works if you want to know. Shiro replied with a nod. Of course, her theory was in fact reality since it was created through a combination of her skills that she had stored up, most of them having to do with shadows and puppeteering. Oh, please enlighten me. Liang Jie replied. You see, when you activate this skill, it links up to all the shadows on the field, mainly the ones that are under your subordinates. Afterwards, it will then measure your strength against theirs. If it's higher, it will stimulate a dangerous feeling from inside the shadow, making them want to avoid it unconsciously. Using this unconscious fear, they will move according to how you control them on the map. As for how this fear will control them, the details are more to do with the psychological thought process rather than magic. As she was explaining the theory behind the commander skill, she could see the other elders accepting the idea and grab an earpiece for themselves. Such an item would be extremely helpful. Say, how did you get so many of these? The martial hero asked with a frown. If they had this on the front lines, the situation would be less stressful on those in charge. After all, in a heated battle, it was quite difficult for people to hear orders over the shouting and magic casting. Let's just say it's a trade secret. We're in a partnership right now to take down this threat. I'll be providing you with everything that may help, and in return, you will not question me about where I had received these items, okay? Shiro smiled. Yes. Of course, I'll be taking them back at the end of the battle since these are my items. She followed up. Snapping her finger, the earpiece in the martial hero's hands disintegrated before reappearing back in her palms. Seeing this, the martial hero knew that this was a subtle warning for him to keep his nose out of her business. Respecting her privacy, he decided to back off. Everyone had their secrets. If she didn't want to share hers, then so be it. Now then, if you don't mind, I have other tasks to complete. Shiro smiled before standing up. Leaving the inn with Keiko, she started to make her way to the attack force. After all, she still needed to place a few monitoring chips on their body so that she could use her grace skill on time. Just as she was about to activate her stealth skills, she realized that it would probably be better for Keiko to do it since she was someone who focused around assassination and stealth. Keiko, if you don't mind, are you able to do me a favor? Shiro asked. Of course. What do you need? Keiko replied. Are you able to help me distribute these amongst the 3,000 adventurers that came with the attack force? You need to make sure that each of them has one and that they don't notice it on their body. I need this to monitor their health and activate the grace skill to the best of its effect. Shiro explained while showing her a tiny chip. I see, sure, I can do that. But you'll need 3,000 of these. Don't worry about that. I can make more myself. Shiro whispered since everything was created from her Snowmancer class. All right, you have that, don't you? Honestly, I keep forgetting how broken your class is. You can make anything you want as long as you have the blueprint. Keiko whispered back since Shiro had described how her class worked to Keiko in brief detail. Yup, so don't worry about it and help me distribute these, okay? Shiro smiled. Sure, I'll probably get it done by the time the second wave arrives. I need to make sure they don't notice it after all. Keiko nodded. That's fine. In the meantime, is there anything you want me to do for you while you deal with this? Shiro asked. Nah, most of my jobs are done. Anyways, give me the chips. I'll go hand these out now. Keiko smiled as Shiro nodded. Making 3,000 chips for each of the adventurers, Shiro gave them to Keiko in the form of a small box. Tap it once to make a chip. There are 3,000 chips stored in this. Shiro explained. Taking the box with a nod, Keiko activated her stealth and started to distribute these amongst the attack force without anyone knowing. Why aren't you telling her the second use of these chips? Nimue asked curiously. If I did, it would make her suspicious of everyone around her, and we don't need to sow distrust this early on. Shiro replied with a shake of her head. Even so, did you spot a few adventurers that seemed fishy? Nimue frowned. Yes, but we don't know their origins. They might be part of the government sent to keep an eye on everything, or they might be spies sent by the light god. We don't know. Hence why I'll be monitoring them extremely closely with the chips. Should they use mana or a device to contact anyone, I'll be notified. At that point, all I need to do is to hack their devices to see who they're working for and eliminate them as planned. Plus, even if they don't act now and instead act in the middle of the battle, I can stop their use of mana with this chip and have Keiko assassinate them. Shiro smiled coldly. Seeing this, Nimue only chuckled. And this is exactly why it was strange for you to have the benevolent saint title. What kind of saint places trackers and mana restrictors onto her allies? Me? Shiro laughed. Joking around with Nimue for a few short moments, Shiro decided to see what Nantion was up to. Asking a few of the elders about his location, they replied that he took a short trip back to his branch to get some weapons for this fight. Nodding her head, Shiro went back to her room for now. Waving her hand, a holographic monitor appeared in front of her as green dots could be seen with their health percentage displayed above them. Seeing more dots appearing, Shiro knew that Keiko was working quite efficiently. At this rate, she'll be finished an hour or so before the second wave arrives. Shiro thought to herself before laying back on the bed. Once the second wave arrives and Keiko distributes the chips amongst them, they'll be ready to attack the dungeon. Plus, since it was at night, the light god will be at a slight disadvantage. Taking a deep breath, Shiro glanced down at her hands and saw that they were shaking ever so slightly. Balling her hands into a fist to stop the shaking, she glared at the ceiling. It was now all or nothing. As the second wave of the attack force arrived in the village, Shiro had Estrella prepare to escort them into her realm so that they could hide their number advantage. Of course, she also had Keiko distribute more of the chips so that every single one of the adventurers had a chip with them. Once she was sure that everyone was given a chip, she sent a notice to Nantion to remind him that everything was ready and that he should start making his way back from the branch. To which he only replied with, "I'll be there, don't worry." Seeing his response, Shiro only shrugged before putting her phone away. Since he told her not to worry, she won't. After which, she instructed Keiko to lead everyone inside Estrella's dimension. Sitting in the corner of Estrella's realm, Shiro watched as Keiko, the martial hero, and the elders talked to everyone about the upcoming fight. While they were doing this, she was tapping away at her computer. As you all know, this is the first time in a while that this many high-level adventurers have gathered to face up against a single threat. Even the rebellion 15 years ago in Rue didn't require this much manpower, so you know the threat is serious. With us, we have 2 heroes, a total of 8 elders that are level 500, a level 500 spirit that will help us go undetected, and finally, we have you, the key players of this operation. Keiko shouted out as the adventurers listened with a serious expression. Naturally, for an operation to require this much manpower, you know the risk of death is high. However, what if I told you that we have a healing skill that can heal everyone here by a minimum of 40% of your health per cast? Keiko grinned as a commotion rang out within the attack force. Though a skill that can heal everyone comes with a cost, there are only 4 charges of this skill, meaning you basically have 4 additional lives. Of course, this does not mean you should throw it away without a care in the world. The healing is limited, so you still need to take caution, she warned as the excitement died out just a little. Seeing that they settled down a little, Keiko nodded her head in satisfaction. Now that you know what's backing you up in the coming fight, I shall now tell you our strategy. Since there are more than 6,000 of us, getting the advantage at the start of the fight is going to be difficult if we don't surround the enemy. Hence why we'll be waiting inside this realm. Estrella, the one that brought you in here, will be ready to teleport everyone out the moment we come into contact with the enemy. Hence why I'll be needing everyone to stand on guard inside this realm while we invade the dungeon. As for some pre-battle preparation, we'll assign you into groups of 500 and each of you will be under a different leader. Keiko called out. Standing up, Shiro walked over to Keiko and handed her a few sheets of paper. These were the groups that she had assigned while she was explaining the situation to her. During those moments, Shiro used the chips that were present on the adventurers' bodies to find their identification within the government's database. Naturally, there were a few defensive measures, but Shiro bypassed them with ease. Setting it up so that each group had amazing synergy with each other, Shiro made sure that the suspicious individuals were put in Nantion's group so that he could deal with them swiftly. Not only that, but Shiro also passed her a holographic device that would show the adventurers a few of the light god skills so that they could mentally prepare. As this was happening, the adventurers were naturally curious about who she was, but brushed it off as Keiko's assistant for now. After all, she wasn't a part of the attack force, and since Keiko didn't say anything about her, they believed that she wasn't anyone important. Let's see. I'll have the esteemed elders here help me organize all of you into groups. In the meantime, I will now display a few of the skills that you need to watch out for when the fight begins. Keiko called out while pointing at a second hologram. On that, the light god skills were displayed in categories. N. Single target, multi-target, self-heal, /buff, enemy debuff, disengage, and passives. The single target spells were near instantaneous due to the fact that his main element was light. However, there was a way to get past this. If you have a high-level reflective skill such as Crystal Maze, you would be able to mitigate most of the damage. Since Crystal Maze was a high-level tank spell, Shiro made sure that each group had at least 10 people with this spell so that they could rotate between one another in case the spell was on cooldown. As for the multi-target spells, the best way to stop them was to have a disruption mage on standby and cancel out certain parts of this magic circle. Most would think that one should just cancel the entire thing, but by targeting certain portions that focus on increasing the damage, the light god's multi-attack spells would be about as harmful as Torchlight. With this, one could save more mana since not everyone could regenerate it at a monstrous pace like how Shiro could. Of course, Shiro would also make sure that she could assist in taking out the magic circles since her skill set made her a pretty good anti-mage personnel. Unfortunately, they couldn't do much about the self-heal, /buff, and the enemy debuff. The best they could do was damage him as much as they could so that they would cancel out his healing. Naturally, there was a giant red banner saying, "No light magic allowed." The reason was self-explanatory since who in their right mind would use light against a light god. Though Shiro didn't tell the elders nor the attack force about the light god's true identity. All they know is that they're fighting against a psychopath with a god and hero complex. After all, if they knew that they were fighting a god, she doubted that a lot of them would stay around to see the end of this. Finally, the disengage was the most troublesome. He had quite a few skills, but his favorite one was when he would blind everyone with a bright flash of light. In that time, he was able to teleport to any place the light had touched. The only way they could counter this was if they sealed the area around him. As the adventurers read about the skills, they couldn't believe that a single person could have this many troublesome skills and passives. If he was under any form of light, his healing would be increased. If he was damaged by light, he would be healed for twice the amount of damage done. In daylight, he would gain certain buffs and so on. Just looking at this list told the adventurers that this fight was going to be a tedious one. A battle of attrition that could last a lot longer than they had expected. While this was happening, Shiro hopped out of the realm to call Nantion and ask him where he was. After all, they were about to enter the dungeon soon and Shiro didn't want to wait too long. They've already waited for 3 days, and the more they wait, the more danger the captives will be in. Just as she was about to call Nantion, she realized that he was walking into the village right now. "Took you a while. What did you even take from your vault?" Shiro asked curiously. "Oh, just a few things to help us in the fight. If this enemy is as troublesome as you had described, I'll need to make sure that he doesn't split out of our reach at the very last moment. Who knows if we'll have another chance like this. After all, he did escape the government's radar despite having kidnapped so many people. I've already collected a few records from our scouts in the sect, and the government had been trying to find the culprit for many years, but to no avail. Many of them dismissed it as the Black Monarchy's doing, but now we know the truth." Nantion shrugged as Shiro nodded her head. "Amen. Anyways, the operation is about to begin. The attack force had already been split into several groups, and you'll take charge of one of them." "Got it. Let's kill this ***starred. Nantion smiled since he knew the light god was the biggest obstacle in Shiro's life. Once they got rid of him, she could rest easy knowing that he won't be bothering them until the age of demons and gods. Hearing his response, Shiro only smiled and brought him into Estrella's realm. Once she enters the dungeon, they were going to finally confront her mortal enemy. After helping Nantion into Estrella's realm, Shiro allowed Estrella into her mana realm and let her stay on the Shadow Island for now. Walking through the now empty village, she took a moment to clear her mind so that she was entirely focused on the fight. In her focused state, she would be okay with sacrifices that were necessary in ensuring that the light god didn't escape. While she wouldn't be actively seeking ways to kill their troops, she was prepared to let a few die at any given point. After all, 1 or 2 deaths now will prevent thousands from dying later. In her opinion, a worthwhile trade. Of course, she knew that it was easy for her to say such things since she wasn't the one being killed for someone else's benefit. Shaking her head, she started to make her way to the dungeon. Actually, Izul, Shiro called out. Emin, what is it? Can you take Addy and get a bit further away from the dungeon? I don't want him or you to be included in the collateral damage. Neither of you have a contract with me, so even if I somehow die, which I doubt, you two can still live on. Shiro smiled as Izul immediately furrowed her brows. Why dash? Izul, I'm being serious. If you're not going to do it, I'll get Nimue to do it. At least if you're the one to take Addy away, you won't die if I also died. If Nimue took Addy away, he would have no one else to look after him should anything go wrong. Shiro cut her off with a frown. She's right, you know. Nimue nodded as Izul wanted to protest, but seeing both of their stubborn gazes, she knew that Shiro would send Nimue if she was to refuse. URG, at least give me something to watch the battlefield with. I want to witness everything that goes on. Izul sighed. If she went, she could look after Addy if anything went wrong. Of course, you can take this. Press the button, and you'll be able to watch the battlefield from my point of view. Shiro nodded as she created a small metallic box that had a power button. Sending both Izul and Addy out of her mana realm, she gave the two of them a hug before flickering towards the dungeon at full speed. Looking down at the box in her hands, Izul gritted her teeth and started to run in an opposite direction with Addy in her arms. ####. Arriving in front of the dungeon border, Shiro had a serious expression since she needed to make sure that she's not discovered upon entry. Understanding that this was one of the safer locations to enter from, as it was the furthest point from any of the skyscrapers, she pressed her palm against the fissure and felt her body being dragged inside the dungeon. The first thing she felt upon entry was the mana-rich environment along with the snow that she was familiar with through the images of her drones. Looking up, she saw that night was soon approaching and sighed in relief. Once it's nighttime, the light be *starred will lose a few of his benefits. Combat would be much easier should that be the case. She sighed in relief. Quickly suppressing her mana to the point where it was almost non-existent, Shiro started to sneak her way through the blizzard. While she wanted to fight as soon as possible, finding out the location of Yuki and the other high-level captives was high on her to-do list. Should she be able to rescue them, it decreases the possibility of the light god using them as EXP packs in the middle of the fight. Looking at a mental map of the place, Shiro estimated her current location and started to make her way towards one of the missing areas that she was not able to scout out. Making her way to the missing area, she created a few drones and sent them flying into the air while making sure that they were camouflaged. Letting the drones scout out ahead of her so that she could prepare for danger, she took this moment to craft 2 items for herself. The first of which was a suppressed handgun that would send out a controlled shock to her enemy's brain, depending on the situation, and the second item was a multi-purpose gauntlet. The gauntlet would help her maneuver around the area without using too much mana. After all, using mana would give away her location easily. Once she was sure that the road ahead of her was clear, Shiro started to dash towards the missing area in order to shorten the travel time. When she was around 1 kilometer away from the border of this area, she tapped her gauntlet and had it transform into a pair of binoculars. This tower is structured rather differently compared to the others. It's shorter than the other towers, but it's more fortified. There are a few barriers already visible from the outside, so I'm guessing that unless I'm registered as an ally by the barriers, moving around inside the tower would be dangerous. Shiro frowned after a quick examination. Not only that, but she could also spot a few guards patrolling around the edge of the tower, while quite a few were stationed on the top. Her main goal was to see who was inside of this dungeon, and an easy way to accomplish this would be to go to the roof and set down a scanner that picks up traces of mana. As long as she allowed the scanner to scan the entire building, she'll be able to get an estimate on how many people there are, and their individual mana density to make an estimate on what level they are. If they're in the A class, she'll plant a few traps so that once combat starts, she'll be able to remotely help these people out of their prison. Taking care to shorten the distance between her and the tower, she flexed her fingers and increased the intensity of the blizzard using her ice magic. That way, the natural blizzard could provide her with a bit of cover. Forcing the guards to shield their eyes for a moment, Shiro then fired a grapple from her gauntlet and pulled herself against the wall of the tower. Pulling herself up to the roof while carefully avoiding all of the barriers, she waited until the guards turned around before hauling herself over the edge. Seeing that there were only 3 guards, Shiro wasn't too worried about her plan not working since they were barely over level 250. To make things easier, they weren't exactly on guard either since they didn't have any protective skills activated. If they did, the next step would be much harder. Dashing to the closest guard, she pressed the trigger against the nape of his neck and sent out a controlled shock. Making it so that the controlled shock knocked them out for a short moment, Shiro dashed to the next guard and did the same. Soon, all 3 guards were knocked out, and she started to scan the building. She couldn't stay in one place for too long, so she must be quick with her actions. After a few short minutes that felt like years, Shiro saw that most of the people held captive in this place were B-ranked and clicked her tongue. TCH, most of these guys are less than level 200. It's a bust, she thought to herself. Applying another shock to the guards, she woke them up before quickly vaulting over the side of the building. Using her grapple to slow her descent, she managed to leave this area without arousing suspicion. Phew, 1 missing area down. 5 more to go. Unfortunately for her, 4 of the missing areas that she had scanned after the first one was in the same situation, and the only remaining area was in the center of the dungeon. One that practically screamed, "Enemy headquarters" on a neon sign. Sighing for a short moment, Shiro started to make her way to the main building while making sure that she was ready to summon Estella at a moment's notice. After all, the moment she was deemed a threat, she only had a small window of time for her to summon the attack force, or else her head would be ripped off her torso, killing her before the battle could even start. Please let Yuki be in here. Compared to the other missing areas, this one was clearly on another level. She could see roughly 30+ guards just patrolling around the outside of the tower. Plus, they were each higher than level 300. There were even a few that were approaching the level 400 mark. Furrowing her brows, Shiro wasn't too sure about how she should approach this. If the guards were less than 300, she could somewhat deal with them like what she had done in the previous towers, but anything above 300 was going to be very troublesome. Thinking about it for a moment, Shiro decided to use a scouting drone. While it may be able to bypass a few of the guards, it will not escape the light god's notice should he be in there. However, this was okay since she's pretty much scouted out everything that she wanted except for this place. Naturally, the map inside Estrella's realm was being updated, so they weren't spending the time wondering what was happening. Stepping back a little, Shiro flexed her fingers and created a scouting drone. Camouflaging its mana signal as well as appearance, she then had it make its way towards the main base. Controlling the drone, she started to avoid the guards while sending out tiny chips that would eat away at the mana within the main building. That way, the barriers are either shut down or weakened. Not only that, but she had also ordered the drone to implant a few scanning chips to the side of the building. Unfortunately, their range was lowered. If she didn't lower the range, the guards would have detected the scanners. As an image of the building slowly appeared in her mind, a huge burst of mana exploded out from within the building. Asterisk Kish. Bang. Causing her scouting drone and chips to explode due to the flood of mana, Shiro clicked her tongue and started to make some distance between her and the building. But just before she retreated, she slid her hand across the ground and created another scout, which burrowed deep underground. While the battle was happening, she was going to have this drone search for Yuki. After making some distance between her and the tower, she made a hook and a lower face mask so that the light god didn't recognize her too soon. A girl. A familiar, repulsive voice rang out as Shiro suppressed her killing intent. Looking up, she could see the disdain-filled eyes of the light god staring down at her. Keeping her mouth shut for now, Shiro narrowed her eyes at him and kept her guard up. "Your machines. Where did you get them from?" he asked as he reappeared beside her. "The black market. Where else?" Shiro replied while activating her hollow deceit and traded places with one of her phantoms. Furrowing his brows for a moment, the light god waved his hand and sent an attack towards her. Sensing a sudden increase in mana, Shiro tried to dodge to the side, but a beam of light pierced through her shoulder. Gah! Holding her wounded shoulder, Shiro dashed back once more. She wasn't going to summon the army just yet since he was still a little on guard about her despite her level being quite low. Still not going to talk? The light god questioned with a frown. Like I said, the black market. Shiro replied once more as she kept an eye out for any openings. While this was happening, Nimue watched nervously with Estrella since a slip-up now meant death. Fine, I'll change my question. What are you doing trying to scout out what's happening inside the building? He asked once more. Does telling you give me a chance to live? I doubt it. So why should I tell you? Shiro chuckled. Because I'll grant you a merciful death if you do. One that is painless. Unless you want to be used a few times before you die? My men are quite eager. The light god narrowed his eyes as Shiro immediately felt repulsed. Disgusting. Shiro frowned with disgust. So what is your answer? He asked once more. As long as he knew where she had received these devices, he'll be able to track down Nitri and end her once and for all. Despite having killed her supposed incarnation, his daughter was still missing her avatar, which meant that Nitri was still alive even after all the preparation he had done to keep her dead. Taking a moment to think about it, Shiro stayed silent. I got it from a woman. Black-haired, rather good-looking. She could make these with ease, and she gave me a few to scout out this region. Shiro said, as if having given up. However, while she was saying this, she had also asked Estrella to have all the people in her realm prepare their spells so that they could get a jump on the light god. Ho, then you have some left in your inventory, right? MN. Hand them over. He ordered. Nodding her head, Shiro reached into her inventory and pulled out a drone from within her inventory. Giving it to the light god, she watched as he examined it with a frown. TCH, this is indeed the B*TCH's nanobots. To think she's still alive. He muttered before activating a tracking spell. Seeing this, Shiro knew that the act was over. Pulling down her hood and mask just as the light god activated this spell, she grinned and gave him a middle finger. It's been a long time, light B*starred. You missed me. Seeing the familiar face, he raised his arm and prepared to send an attack through her head. Estrella, Shiro shouted out. Jumping out from her mana realm, Estella kicked against the light god's elbow and forced his attack to miss Shiro. Nitri, the light god shouted out in anger as he threw the drone back and tried to reach out for her. Take this gift of mine. Shiro laughed and detonated the drone. Exploding out of the drone, several daggers that were enchanted by her celestial path stabbed against the light god. Since he was taken by surprise, he wasn't able to put up his defenses in time and took the brunt of the attack. While this was happening, Estrella opened the portal above them as an army of 6,000 dropped into the dungeon, each with their most powerful attack spells ready to be fired at any moment. Fire, Nantion commanded. With the celestial path enchanted daggers restricting the light god's mana for a short moment, he was forced to grit his teeth and defend against the attacks with his body. Glaring towards Shiro with killing intent, the light god tried to force his way past, but the constant barrage of spells stopped him. ARGG. Begone, he shouted out in rage as he sent out a wave of mana. Bang. Crashing against the spells and forcing them back a little, he dashed towards Shiro in an attempt to kill her right here and now. Not so fast. Don't go around killing my cousin for a second time now, you see and T. Keiko flickered in front of him and drove a dagger into his ribs. Unfortunately, he was able to stop the dagger with his fingers and tried to snap the blade. Before this could happen, an elder appeared next to him and slammed a fist against his temple. Don't go targeting the younger generation when you've got 6,000 of us wanting your head. He chuckled as he activated one of his martial skills. Feeling waves upon waves of vibrations traveling through his body, Ikari knew that he wasn't going to reach Shiro at this rate. Plus, there were also several other level 500s coming to get an attack or two on him. Taking a deep breath, he slammed his arm down as hundreds of Tier 6 magic circles erupted around him. Seeing this, Shiro immediately created 2 Gatling cannons and loaded them up with mana disruption bullets. Locking onto all of the magic circles that she could see, she pulled the trigger and tried to hinder as many of them as she could. Unfortunately, his activation speed was much higher than what she had expected, and he was able to set them off without any problems. Understanding that she was late, Shiro immediately activated a charge of her grace skill. Since none of the adventurers was harmed yet, they received an additional 60% of their max health, 40% increase to mana and magic effectiveness. And the cherry on top, an astounding 80% resistance to damage from all sources. With this activation, she now had 3 charges of her grace left, which wasn't exactly the best since the battle hadn't even lasted for an entire minute. Just as she activated her grace skill, she watched as thousands upon thousands of light spears stabbed their way through the attack force. Even with her grace skill and the tanks trying to mitigate a lot of the damage, they still suffered heavy injuries, with a few of them being on the brink of death. "You've got to be **ting me," Shiro muttered as the casualties they face might be higher than what she had initially estimated before the fight.
Thank you for watching. I hope you enjoyed today's episode. If you did, please like, share, and subscribe.